Welcome to the presentation of my paper, Learner Autonomy, a Theoretical Phantasm. Learner autonomy is a well-established concept that has a more than 30-year tradition of research within the educational context. Today, the concept of learner autonomy is an umbrella term that is linked to other terms such as self-directed learning, self-regulated learning, or individualization. The theoretical conceptions of learner autonomy and its related concepts have been adopted by educational systems, including Australia. The Australian Ministerial Council on Education, Employment and Youth Affairs highlights the educational goal that young adults should become successful learners, confident and creative individuals, and active and informed citizens. The focus on encouraging students to become autonomous learners is thus apparent. However, only few studies have been conducted to identify whether the theoretical concept of learner autonomy has actually found currency in the educational system. This study attempted to provide more details on the perception of learner autonomy and its implementation in the Australian schooling context. As each state and territory has their own right to administer themselves, approvals for this study were only obtained from the Catholic Education Office Sydney and the Departments of Education and Training in New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, and the Australian Capital Territory. The research covered an area of 62% of all secondary and combined schools, with 1,690 schools out of 2,744. The total sample of 1,690 schools was ranked randomly, and the first 50% of the sample were asked to participate in this online survey. The survey proposal addressed principals, deputy principals, and directors of studies. After 2 calls for participation, 212 schools had accessed the online survey. 128 questionnaires were completed. 84 showed either missing answers or did not start the survey. Now let's have a look at the results. The biggest group of participants was represented by public high schools. Comprehensive K-12 schools represented the second biggest group. Independent private high schools and K-12 schools formed the third biggest group, followed by selective private and public high schools in 4th position and Catholic systemic schools in 6th position. The smallest category was identified as other. As there are various definitions of learner autonomy and related concepts, participants were given 8 commonly cited definitions on the concept of learner autonomy. The researchers who developed the definitions remained anonymous in the survey. Participants ranked each definition on a scale between 1, I strongly agree, and 4, I strongly disagree. In general, principals rather agreed with all definitions except 1. Only definition 2, which designates the learner the total responsibility for her or his actions, was ranked 3 on the scale, meaning that participants rather disagreed with this definition. Participants were, however, not critical with regard to related but not identical autonomy concepts. The list of definitions included 2 which define independent learning and self-regulated learning. However, participants rather agreed with these definitions. Thus, in praxis, it seems that a clear distinction between learner autonomy and related concepts such as independent learning and self-regulated learning is not made. Participants were further asked as to whether they engage in learner autonomy. A total number of 109 participants, and thus 66.5%, indicated that their school engaged in the concept of learner autonomy, and 55 participants, or 33.5%, negated any engagement in learner autonomy. Splitting the results of engagement in learner autonomy according to the different school types, a slightly different picture evolves with regard to their engagement in learner autonomy. Although all school types show a clear tendency to support learner autonomy, selective public and independent high schools seem to be the strongest supporters of this educational concept. In contrast to the private education sector, a higher proportion of public high schools and comprehensive K-12 schools appear to prefer other educational concepts than learner autonomy. A small majority of 57%, or 46 participants, of public high schools agreed to be engaging in learner autonomy, whereas around 35 of the asked schools, and thus 43%, refrain from this concept. Students studying at K-12 public schools are more likely to develop autonomous learning skills, with 68% of the school type supporting learner autonomy. This research further attempted to identify different pathways that schools take to foster learner autonomy. Participants who had indicated that their school actively supported learner autonomy were further asked as to whether their school used an instrument to enhance learner autonomy. 87% of the participants engaging in learner autonomy have an instrument such as a learning plan, diary, portfolio, or computer program implemented at their school. Looking at the results by school type, public high schools, selective schools, and comprehensive K-12 schools showed with over 90% to be nearly identically strong instrument users. In addition, all participants from Catholic schools stated to be using an instrument. Private high schools and K-12 schools, on the other hand, differed in their preferences. About 1/3 of these participants denied the use of an instrument. Thus, a significant relationship between school type and the use of an instrument was observed. Only 13% of the participants engaging in autonomy indicated that they do not use an instrument. Nearly half of those participants indicated that their engagement in autonomy was based on a particular methodology. Students are, for example, assessed according to the Bloom Grid or the Julia-Atkins model. Attempting to identify the preferred instruments used in the educational systems, instrument users were able to choose from 4 given instruments. With regard to the frequency according to which the instruments are implemented, about 2/3 of the schools always use their instruments. An equal percentage of 13% use their instruments regularly or sometimes. Furthermore, instruments are mainly used across the curriculum in all subjects. Regarding the preference of an instrument, a ranking is apparent. The learning plan or contract is used by 88% of all participants. About 2/3 of all responses indicated that computers and diaries are part of a school curriculum. However, the use of a particular instrument varies amongst the different school types. Learning plans are the favorable instrument in all school types apart from Catholic systemic high schools. While the computer is the second favorite instrument used to support learner autonomy in public high schools, the diary is the second preferred instrument by all other school types. This underpins the earlier conclusion that the different school types support learner autonomy in different ways. As learning plans form by far the most preferable instrument, we will now focus on this instrument. First, comparing the figures of public high schools with those from public K-12 schools, students from public high schools may be twice as likely to be working with the learning plan than students at K-12 schools. In addition, strong emphasis is placed on the needs of students with disadvantaged background. Aboriginal students form the second biggest group of students in which learning plans are used. The biggest group, however, represents students with learning needs, which include behavioural issues, learning difficulties, or disabilities. Gifted or talented students, on the other hand, were specified as the third biggest group in which learning plans are applied restrictively. To sum up, the results of the study indicate that theoretical concepts on learner autonomy do not remain enclosed in the ivory towers of universities and other research institutions. Concepts on learner autonomy find currency in the majority of secondary Australian schools. Thereby, it seems that schools consider a variety of aspects under the term of learner autonomy, but schools seem to prioritise their own beliefs of what learner autonomy should imply. Further, secondary schools show differences in the ways their understanding of learner autonomy should be translated into the school curriculum. The majority of all school types use an instrument to foster learner autonomy across the curriculum. However, students attending comprehensive K-12 schools are more likely to work with an instrument than public high school students. Regardless of the school type, however, learning plans form the most commonly used instrument. The use is limited in the majority of cases to irregular but not constant use. All in all, learner autonomy is far more than a theoretical phantasm although it has not been adopted by all schools.